Right now we have the list of posts here, but if we click on one of the links, we get an error. Why? Because we haven't created the details page for each post. Let's get to it. To develop the page where we display a post, we're going to reuse a lot of what we've already done on the listing page. That is, here on the listing page, we had a post API and a post model. So we bring that over. And you might ask, how? But if you're bringing me a list, and what I want to see is the details of a single post. This works this way because of how Astro operates. During the generation process, it reads all the posts and creates an HTML page for each one, so the process is very similar to that of the listing page. However, to generate a page for each post, we will need to give the page a special name. In fact, we will enclose slug in brackets, although you can name it whatever you want. It's like a variable, something dynamic. Then, we will use a function called getStaticPaths to populate that slug and generate a page for each post. Let's get to it. We go under the post directory, and I'm going to create a file called slug.astro. The brackets are very important. And now we start coding behind bars. The first thing I'm going to do is configure Markdown, because this time Markdown is a bit more complex. I'm going to display a Markdown post, and it might include source code using triple backticks, where I can specify HTML, JS, TSX, or whatever I want. And I want to add syntax highlighting, meaning that the code appears with colors, making it easier to read. If you remember, at the beginning we installed a library called highlight.js, which works really well with Markdown to generate colored code. Alright, so what are we going to do? We're going to bring in a few things. Alright, I'm going to add some imports here and let's see what they are. The first one is our Markdown library, the one we are using. Then the layout, which is for the page. I'll bring it in from the API. And the getPost function, which we implemented ourselves. Remember, it's the one we set up in the preview step. And our highlight.js, so we can use it with Markdown. What's the issue? We need to add a bit of configuration to Markdown so that it uses highlight.js. So we come over here, and this is the necessary configuration. In other words, I'm telling Markdown, hey, when you're rendering, know that you have a code highlighting validation here to display it with colors when needed. And while we're at it, we pass these options to Markdown, and now it can work with them. And now we're going to define the getStaticPaths function, where we'll generate a slug for each post and pass the corresponding information to the props of that page for each post. In other words, we come here and define this function. Export async function getStaticPaths inside. We read the list of posts by calling the API we previously created with getPosts, which is in posts API. And now we essentially go through each one of the posts using post map, where we have our post. Here, what we are going to do is return an object. In this object, what we're going to do is, okay, we have the params, which are parameters, and remember that we've set a parameter called slug. So I'm going to assign this particular parameter named as slug, so it will be equal exactly matching with whatever value there exists in post.title. Be careful, since this will be in the URL parameters, we might need to escape some characters or handle certain things. What am I going to do? Well, here I'm going to add some code to extract this slug and make sure I don't run into issues when using it inside a URL. Now that we have this, in the second parameter of this object, we are going to set the props that each page will receive, which will be the post data. And now I read those props here. I come here and say props is equal to Astro props. So look how interesting this is. Post. Here in getStaticPaths, I read the list of posts, map through them, and return a list of pages. I define the slug for each page, meaning this parameter here, and pass the post data in props. That way, when it reaches the page, I can read that post from the props. And now let's start structuring and displaying the information. Let's process the data a little to make it easier to display in HTML. First, in post.content, I want to generate the HTML from the Markdown, which we previously did using marked. Second, for the date, I'm going to copy and paste that code. A bit of an ugly approach because ideally it should have been placed in a utility or something, or we could use a library for this. But anyway, I format and extract the date. And for the image, what I'm going to do is essentially extract the image URL based on this link. And with that, I basically have it essentially set up. Now let's put this together in a bit of a messy way. Let's add a layout here. The first thing I'm going to do is display hello post to make sure the navigation works correctly. That is, I select the post, click on it, and it navigates to the post. All right, first step. Next step, let's see if we can read the props of the post I clicked on. So I come here and add an H. Well, look at the URL, it should already be showing. If we make this bigger, do you see that it displays the article title? Not bad. So if we add an H, such as a heading or subtitle, with, for example, the post title, it appears here to the content, for instance. And let's add a bit more info. All right, the author and the date. Let's go here, we add it, and it appears. We can even display the image if we place it here. Since we said that a post would have a main header image, followed by the post itself, and the summary is also showing up here. Pretty cool, right? And the content over here. For now, everything looks super ugly. If you want, we can wrap it in an article tag to add a bit of HTML semantics. Here it goes. And here we have everything looking great, just like last time. It looks super ugly, but at least it's visible. In fact, what's interesting is that I can already navigate to other posts, and the specific post is displayed. So shall we add a bit of design to this to make it look nicer? Let's add a bunch of styles down here. Here we have styles to set the image as a background for the article, the header, the title, and the content. You can copy all this code from the guide or from GitHub with the example. And now let's go to the layout and tweak this a little. So I'm going to add a container to the article, place this div here, and close it after the article. And now, inside here, we're going to change the article so that it appears white with the background. And what are we going to add? A header. We're going to assign the article the class article, which we defined below. I am now going to add a header to the document. This header will contain some important information, including a paragraph that specifies the exact time it was published. Additionally, it will include the date of publication and a header featuring the title of the document. The title will be formatted as an H1 header, which is a standard way to denote the main heading in HTML documents. This ensures that the information is clearly presented and easy to understand for anyone reading it. All right, here we are. Perfect. Now we're going to carefully insert the article content in this section below, which will be converted into Markdown HTML. This content will be meticulously converted. We insert it here, and here it is. And finally, we're going to add a footer inside the article to indicate who wrote it, written by post author. And here it is. If we make this larger, we see that it behaves fairly well. If we make it smaller, it's perfect. And now we have our post. In fact, we can navigate to any post, display it, and everything is visible here, even with code and all that.